Hey guys, welcome. It's Goose again from Wise Wealth Discord, just here with another Sunday watch list. Wanted to give you guys a little technical analysis again on some of the stocks and ETFs that I'm looking at. As always, starting with SPY again. We're kind of in this falling wedge right now. As you can see, the lines have played out pretty nicely. We did have a breakout on the CPI, ended up fading it, called that out in the Discord earlier in the week. It's kind of just hanging around here. It's finding a decent support around this gap fill that I was expecting. It did slightly get into the gap, but quickly bought up by the bulls. They're not really trying to give it up. So I'll be watching this as it continues to play out. As Jimmy said in the months, sorry, got a little hiccups. In the months August and September, they tend to be a little bit more choppy, which means just kind of sideways consolidation. Nothing's really clear. We're going to continue to keep watching this as it may break out. He did say it's sitting right on the 50-day moving average. I don't have it pulled up on my chart, but it is kind of laying right there. So we'll be watching this as it goes on. There's certain things that I'm looking at. Cues, you got tech. So that's another one that's kind of in like a falling wedge here. As you can see, it's got something going on. Yeah, you probably could move it somewhere over here a little bit. And really what you're waiting for is a breakout. Usually falling wedges are pretty bullish. On the bottom end, you typically want to be getting in calls. On the top, you could start to maybe sell off or see some put action happening. This is kind of what I pulled up on Google for falling wedges. If you look at the images, it's typically a bullish thing. It's just a consolidated sell-off, and then you wait for the break of it happening, and then that's when you can get in calls, and you typically have good swing trades happening there. You got the Qs in one, you got the SPY in one. As you can see, though, I was preaching what you would call a pullback, like somewhere up here, and it seems to be playing out nicely. It's just nice consolidated selling. Anywhere between this gap fill and like the 440 area, I think would be a pretty bullish thing for the stock market if it could hold it. If this ultimate trend line is broken, then there could definitely be a lot more selling going on. But as of right now, it's kind of how the broad market looks. It's just consolidated selling off right now. Until broken, I don't want to get too heavy in some calls. The Qs have been selling off pretty heavy. They finally did fill this gap down here. It's really choppy, as you can see. Gap here, gap there, there. There's just a bunch of gaps, a lot of volatility happening recently. So those are the broad-based indexes that I'm watching. I'm waiting for it to break out in the upside and confirm that it is a falling wedge. You got the dollar, as I was explaining in the Discord. This is the 15 minute. I like to go a little further out. You got kind of a descending wedge happening here. If it is broken in the upside, that's not usually good for stocks. I was explaining that last week in the Discord. When the dollar's going up, risk assets like the tech industry typically are hurt a lot more. So as you can see, as this is coming up, this is over the last since like July, start of August, it's been going up. And then you look at, the indexes, it's been coming down. So it's not usually the best thing when the dollar is coming up. So it's something you kind of want to keep an eye on. Right now, it's getting kind of to the overbought side and it's getting to the top of that wedge. So if denied, you could start to see maybe a little bit of a bullish thing happening, and maybe the SPY or the Qs can start to break out of this wedge that it's been creating. And that would be, another bullish thing because right now we do still have a good uptrend happening. This is just consolidating selling as most people were expecting in August. So keep an eye on the dollar and how it reacts. If it does get denied off of this, then you could start to look for calls, and then the SPY and the Qs, they might start to break out a little bit. It did lose its support that I was seeing right around here because I wanted to see it, make a new retest of this, but it ended up getting denied after CPI. So it sold off promptly. It wasn't too crazy. The SPY really, like, we did have quite a bit of red days, but as of right now, I think we're only about 3% from the top. Yeah, we're only about 3.5%. So a pullback is typically about 5%, 5 to 10%. So we'll see. I think a correction might be a 10%. That might be the right lingo for it. So we'll dive into a little bit more stocks. Apple is a heavy tech stock. Jimmy was posting in the Discord about a bear flag. So this is the flag that he's seeing. As you can see, it's just in this tight consolidation range, but that's a bear flag. When you have the pole coming down and then it stays on this down trend, you're typically waiting for it to break down in the downside, and then it's going to be continued selling off. Apple had a huge trend that was broken, so it was pretty easy short at that point, and it's not really breaking up in the outside as of right now. I did have calls, I think, on the first breakout, and ended up breaking down after that. So we're keeping a close eye on that because Apple is a heavily weighted stock in the Qs, especially the tech sector. So you just want to keep watching this consolidations, wait for the break in either the up or the downside. UPS, I don't think there's much going on. As you can see, the lines did play out perfectly. I've had these plotted for a while. This little wedge that it has going on, and it was denied there. The next support I could see is around the 160, 170 area. If that's broken, then obviously down here is a very strong demand point. It hasn't been broken for quite a while now, since 2021, a couple of years. So it's a good short entry. I can't trade UPS since I work for them, but if you do like options, it's a good spot to get in. Is some of these lines that I have drawn out. You have Microsoft. They're still kind of playing out on that double top area. Nothing's been like a crazy sell off on most stocks, but you see there was a huge denial point from this point, and then now it's looking like it's getting denied from this point. After it lost this, I did think it was concerning. It had its little retest right here. So that's something to watch out for. I would like to see it come back above and hit it again if I were to enter shorts. Um, DraftKings, that's another one that kind of has a decent little wedge happening. I think it's on the daily. No, not the daily. Is it 15 minute? No. I don't know. I might be thinking of a different stock. But right now, DraftKings is looking pretty bullish. Jimmy called this out actually like a month or so ago about a possible, bottom for DraftKings. As you can see, their lowest point is $10, and once it got close to that, bulls started buying it up, and it's holding the trend right now with the bullish engulfing happening right there. So DraftKings is something to watch. They do have a gap above to fill, so that could be some good call or good option plays maybe with some calls, and then obviously resistance is around 35 if it does end up getting up there. Until this trend is broken, I wouldn't short DraftKings. They move pretty well. Boeing, it's got a little bull flag happening after that earnings gap that's appeared. So I've been watching that. As long as this breaks out, up or downside, then that's another play that you could play. That's just kind of how I'm watching Boeing. I know I had the call out when it did break out. It ended up, going quite a bit. I don't know how much percentage that is, but after the breakout from this point, you get another 10%. That's a huge move in a stock. And if you're playing options, it's great. But this consolidation, this is all sideways action. And like I always preach in most videos, is the market can only go up, down, or sideways, and it's important to realize what direction it's heading in. When it's going sideways, you really just want to wait for the break. You want to plot it out and wait for the break to the upside. It was the same thing with Boeing that I was just showing. Oh, this is Boeing. Is down here you have a lot of consolidation and you wait for that break. And when the break does happen, it's a big move. Now we're getting consolidation after that upside movement, and you just want to wait for the break, up or downside. And you don't want to be too biased when it comes to consolidation. You have Meta. Meta's still holding their strong trend. They finally did fill that gap, and they're still holding a strong upside. It's kind of similar to like how Apple was, where they just continue to go up and inch up on their uptrend. So these aren't things that you necessarily want to short until you start to see confirmation of them getting denied. You have Netflix. I always compare them to Microsoft because of the double top that it has, the strong resistance. It's around the 450 area. They're still consolidating though, so it's like it's another one where you just don't want to like short it off the rip just because you see a denial. You're gonna want to see this this little range right here break. And it's like as long as it's still within this purple rectangle, you don't want to get in shorts or calls. You just want to let it chop away. And as you could see, when it did break up in the upside, it was a huge move, but there was a big gap down. I don't know exactly when or what happened that day, but it got right back in the range. So it's like a lot of these things we're just kind of waiting on. Tesla, another one that I saw, it had a rising wedge. A rising wedge is usually a bearish thing, a falling wedge is a bullish thing. When it broke out of the rising wedge, it had a prompt sell off. But now I think I'm going to change the analysis a little bit because it has a falling wedge appearing. It's just been promptly selling off. Nothing too crazy. And you just plot these lines right here and you have yourself a wedge. And it's just like any other pattern that I'm showing you is that it's starting to create lower highs, lower lows, and you're waiting for the breakout in the upside. There is a gap down below that it's been holding on to. The bulls don't want to let that up because then that's another, $5 off the stock price. And as you can see, when it hits the bottom of this band, it's usually a buy up, but when it gets to the top, it's a little sell off. So there's a falling wedge happening on Tesla right now. A lot of things are starting to come down, but they're not like typically super bearish if it stays within this or this falling wedge. So no signs of like anything super bullish or bearish. Like I mentioned earlier in the video and Jimmy mentioned is August and September tend to be more choppy. So it's like this is kind of, I wouldn't say it's trending. I would say this is more choppy. It's just kind of up, down, up, down, up, down, quick price action. So we're watching it nicely. I mean, the overall trend looks slightly bearish because it's in a downtrend. It hasn't really made a higher high yet. But these falling wedges are something to keep an eye out on because when it does break out in the ups or the downside, you can get some good price action going on. We got Shopify. They're starting to find a decent, hopefully a retest. It looks like this rising wedge was broken out in the downside. That was a great short that you could have done. I didn't play Shopify. I don't typically trade their options too much, but that was about a 14% sell off from the rising wedge breaking. They have a gap fill down below, so I think bulls are trying to hold on to this price point of about $54, $55. If it is broken in the downside, I mean, there's a huge gap below, so that would be something that would be concerning. One thing you don't want to get in shorts on is when it shows that it's oversold on the RSI down here. It's very oversold right now because it's had, cup 2, 3, almost a week of time of just selling off. Typically, there's going to be dip buyers that come in around this point, especially with such a strong support line that was previous resistance. They don't want to lose that and then have the gap filled too. So just keeping an eye on these things. You can't obviously predict the future with news, but you can play a lot of technical analysis. Is that you could see that it's getting pretty close to that point. I'm sure if you like slowed it down, you could start to see a little wedge here happening. It's not the most beautiful thing. Sometimes you like to see them a little bit cleaner, but that's just kind of the price action that I'm looking at is that it's finding support. And if it does break out, I could see it, going right back up into the $60, $65 range. Place some calls on it. If it does break below, there's a huge gap to be filled, and that would be around the 45, 44 area that you'd be looking at puts for. Arc is kind of the same thing. It's just a very consolidated, falling wedge. Is that I'm just waiting for some of these things. If the Bulls do want to take control this week, is that they want to break out of some of these. If you start to see Arc break out, or Tesla and all those other stocks that I'm starting to show, is that they're all kind of in a falling wedge pattern, which is a pretty bullish pattern of things. You want to see them break out, and if they do, then that's when you could start to get in calls, especially in the SPY and Qs and stuff. You start to see the indexes follow through. These all hold the individual stocks that I'm looking at with Shopify, Tesla, Apple. Qs hold this. So if it defends this line and it starts to come up, the dollar starts to come down like I was showing you. Because the dollar right now is at a strong resistance point. I mean, it could go up a little bit, but most likely going to be denied from this point. If the dollar starts coming down, then you could start to maybe see the Qs break out from this wedge. You could start to see Tesla break out. Apple might break out from this consolidation. That's a bearish flag, so it is a bearish formation, but you don't want to be too biased and get in, a put position and then get smoked because it breaks out. So you want to wait for the breakouts and be patient with some of these things. Microsoft, I showed that. It does still technically have a little bit of consolidation. There's still a support right around here that it's trying to hold on to. DraftKings, same thing. There was a bounce from this ultimate trend line. It's got a gap above, so some things are starting to show a little bit of more bullish momentum. The bull flag on Boeing. Just going back over what I'm seeing and how like you could kind of put everything together when it comes to the broad-based indexes. Costco, they had their breakout. They're still kind of just wobbling back and forth. Nothing too crazy has happened. That breakout was huge, and it's been kind of promptly going up since then. You got Baba. Baba's still in a huge consolidation area, but it does slowly but surely have a little trend going here. The trend is your friend. You want to just make sure that it continues to hold this, and if it does, it can continue to go up. The next point of resistance would be around the 100, 105 area. I do think if it does get over the 110, 120 area, then it could easily start to break above. Strong resistance at 130. That's a Chinese stock. And I mean, their news has just been ridiculous. They're always coming out with new things to basically just hurt their own country. So I definitely not a huge fan of Chinese stocks, but that is one of the long-term investments I do have is Baba. So I watch them from time to time. You have Nvidia. They were selling off pretty hard this week. Same with AMD. I'll get to that next. They have the rising wedge, and it's like, as you can see, once these things are broken out of in the up or the downside, it's usually a pretty big move. I don't know exactly what percentage it was, but once it broke out, that's a 10% move. That's a huge move in options, and that only took, I want to say, 21 bars, 4 hours. I want to say that's about 10 days. You got 10% move, 10, 11% move. So as you can see, the technical analysis does play out pretty well on the rising wedges or falling wedges. So I think, bulls are probably going to step in here soon because they've let quite a bit of selling happen in the last few days. AMD, they're still holding this little bull flag that's happening until broken in the up or the downside. I'm not getting in any crazy positions. You could always play these spots where it's getting denied or it's being bought up from the bottom band. So I don't know. I'm not really leaning bullish or bearish on most of the stocks that I'm seeing in the stock market right now. I'm really just waiting to see, like I was mentioning before, the SPY. I would like to see them break out in the upside. The Qs, I would like to see them break out in the upside. And then the dollar, I want to see it start to get denied from around this point. If that starts to happen and it comes down, that's when you could start to see, the breakouts on the Qs happening. We do have futures happening right now, and they have a wedge occurring as well. The S&P futures it doesn't move exactly like the S&P 500, but it's pretty damn close. As you can see, they have a wedge happening as well. I think they were up close to 1/4% when they opened, so I don't know what's going on, but now they're barely green. They were kind of pushing up, but you could see the bulls start to step in right around here. They don't want to lose this point. It did break out, but that's why you wait for the retest confirmation. And as you can see, it got right back in with the range. So I'm just watching it slowly but surely, play out and see what happens. I don't think I'm going to get in any major positions. Right now, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I do have a short on the Qs. It was the weekly that kind of looked interesting to me. When you go to the weekly, it seemed to have lost that support that it had, and you had a bearish engulfing. So it was on that second candle that I got in, but we'll see. I could get smoked on it. Right now, I'm down 10% in the position. Still trading for my buddy's account right now, so trying to play it smoothly, but we'll see. I could get smoked, could not. We'll see what the dollar does. That kind of plays a huge role. I don't show Bitcoin too much, but That was one that I've been like plotting out for a while in the consolidation range that it had. Let me back this up a little bit. So it had this, and then it was broken down on the upside. It's still struggling to get above that point. So until then, I'm not really getting too bullish with it. Ethereum, I don't really plot them very much, but a strong consolidation. It's just going sideways. So with a lot of these things, there's not really anything I could predict as of right now. It would just be called out, middle of the week and wait for some of these things to possibly break out or bounce. So that's about it. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's going to be a boring week, but I'm just waiting to see, how some of these stocks play out. Because as you can see, there's a lot of red here, and they start to get close to the oversold sign. That's usually when bulls start to step in on these trend lines and stuff. And if you wait for the SPY and the Qs to break out, that's your best chance of winning in the market. You don't want to just try and guess that, oh, you know, it's doing this, so it's going to go up. It's like you want to wait for confirmation of the breakouts or the breakdowns. So that's about it that I have. Nothing too crazy this week going on. Jimmy did mention, I think it was on our Twitter page, actually, the Wise Wealth Twitter page. Go to Twitter really quick. Uh, Jimmy was posting on our page that let me go to our page. We have some data coming out. This week's all about retail. We have Target, Walmart, Home Depot, AMAT. I don't know exactly what stock that is, but we have U.S. retail sales Tuesday, 8:30. 8:30, I think, is an hour before market opens. U.S. housing data Wednesday, and then we have FOMC minutes Wednesday as well. So that would probably be a pretty volatile day. So I'm just waiting to see what happens. Nothing too crazy going on right now. Just falling wedges. We got some bull flags on some stocks and things to that nature. Nvidia and AMD are tech heavy. The same thing with Apple. They did break out of these ranges, but as you can see, it's starting to get to that oversold point. So I'm expecting a little bit of a bounce at some point this week, and then we'll see. Obviously, as the dollar and the big ETFs do play out, to see how it plays. And as always, I'll always post in the Discord when I do start to see breakouts or denials, either in the dollar, the SPY, and the Qs. But until then, nothing I could predict. Nothing. I'm not gonna, go ultra bullish, ultra bearish until some of these things are broken out again. I do think that things were kind of getting in that oversold territory, so I could start to see a bounce here soon. But until proven otherwise, I don't really have much else to try and predict. Appreciate you guys checking in. We'll be in touch on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, see when some of these datas and the FOMC minutes happen if there are breakouts. But until then, just keep watching those trends.